Hi everyone, Maurice Crossfield here. If you're like we are here in my house, um, you've been home for a while, which is an excellent time to catch up on your reading. And my publisher, Tina Crossfield, has asked me to read an excerpt from my novel in the hopes that if you haven't read it already, you'll want to get your hands on a copy. It's available at Amazon and several bookstores in the Eastern Townships region or through Crossfield Publishing. Look it up, it's easy to find online. So anyways, I set up here in my wife's art room, which is a nice inspirational space. It has all kinds of things for creating all kinds of art and music, and it's just generally a calm space. Nice place to sit back and do a bit of reading, which I will now do. I hope you like what you hear, and hope that I will be added to your reading list. So here we go. So here I was, sitting in the office at the Granby Leader Mail, wondering what I should do next. I had reported for work at 10, and when I showed up, there was only one reporter there. He introduced himself as John McCausland, welcomed me to the paper, and then rushed out the door. Linda, the newsroom secretary, had met me when I came in. She said Bancroft hadn't given her any directions or instructions as to what I was supposed to be doing or where. She introduced me to the vacant desk, which she figured was the one intended for me. So I sat there, first reading the most recent edition of the paper, then moving on to the other newspapers stacked in the corner. To keep up with things, newspaper offices usually subscribe to any others they can get their hands on, so there's never a shortage of reading material. Pausing from my reading to look around, I was taken in once again by how this didn't look like what I thought my first office would look like. It looked like a newsroom in a 1940s film noir after a bomb had gone off on the set. Everyone seemed to smoke, and the building had apparently been erected with no mind for ventilation. Luckily, last night's storm had killed the heat and humidity, but a constant blue haze hung in the room. George Brown was the publisher of the Granby Leader Mail. This short, fat man smoked particularly vile-smelling cigars. I think they were white owls, the type my mom threatened to force me to smoke if she ever caught me with a cigarette. As he was walking by, Linda stopped him to introduce him to his newest underling. "Welcome to the Granby Liar," he grunted in a voice filled with gravel. He turned his back and walked away before I could say anything. Tired of both my reading and my warm reception, I began wandering the building. The people in advertising visited amongst themselves and totally ignored my existence. I wondered how they ever managed to sell much of anything with all that gossiping going on. But salespeople are by nature the most social of beings, and stopping them from talking would be like trying to stop a tidal wave with a dinner fork. In production, 4 people were working over light tables, pasting up the comics, death notices, and some of the social notes. This was where the paper took shape, put together with skilled hands, wax, and knives. These guys were so much faster than anything I'd ever managed to do pasting up the McGill Daily News. The end product was a lot cleaner looking too. As I was wandering back to my desk, in walked Harry Bancroft. He isn't there 20 seconds, and he's already sending me on my first assignment, something to do with a cattle thief. My first vision was of some guy stuffing a cow into a Volkswagen Beetle in the middle of the night, and I had a hard time not to smile. Mind you, the prospect of covering court as my very first assignment did a lot to help me take things more seriously. I'd never seen the inside of a courtroom, except on my black and white TV, not in real life Technicolor. I was being thrown to the wolves, and I hadn't even collected my first paycheck yet. I pictured the headline: Fledgling reporter freaks out, skips town. At that moment, it seemed a sensible option. Fortunately, I have a talent for looking calm when I'm actually about to soil myself. It helped during the job interview, and I was sure it would come in handy from time to time at my new job. I didn't say a word, picked up my notepad, and headed out the door. Pity I didn't ask directions to the courthouse. Too embarrassed to go back and ask, I drove to the nearest phone booth and looked up the address. Then I drove back to the parking lot of the Leader Mail, walked across the street, down 2 buildings, and into the courthouse. So much for claiming mileage. The courthouse was a dumpy little building, which, as I learned later, the government was already planning to replace. Inside the dumpy little building, I found a dumpy little clerk, who, without so much as a word, pointed me to dumpy little courtroom B. They were in the middle of going through the roll, and my cattle rustler is in there somewhere. The process is so fast, the prosecutors don't even read out the charges, giving numbers in the criminal code instead. The sickening feeling that I'm about to come up empty on my first assignment returns. Then, this extremely dirty little guy appears at the dock in handcuffs. I glance at his work boots and spot what I think is cowship. I'm no expert on the matter, but in a few seconds I get a whiff, and I know I've got my man. The feeling of confidence vanishes abruptly once again when, before anything seems to happen, the judge orders the man to return for a bail hearing in 2 days. At that moment, I see a fat little cop Bancroft was talking about get up and leave the courtroom. I get up and give chase. Fernand Dubois was a provincial cop for 15 years before he was sidelined by heart problems. After that, he was reassigned to a desk, ending up being the unofficial flack who deals with reporter questions so the healthy cops can continue to beat up the bad guys. He likes being recognized as the man in charge, even though they don't even give him a gun anymore. Following a brief introduction, Dubois launches into a speech, giving me the information I needed, including a rundown of just what it was I'd seen in the courtroom. His name is Mark Simpson, age 22. For the last 6 months, he's been stealing cattle across the region, from Dunham to Shefford Township. The first theft took place in April, and the last one happened last night. In between, we believe he has been involved in no less than 10 thefts, stealing a total of 25 cattle. After a brief pause, he continued. He used a horse trailer pulled behind a truck, which was reported stolen in the summer. We also believe there were 2 other men involved in the thefts, and we are expecting to make further arrests as the investigation progresses. What did he do with the cattle? I asked, my absurd imagination conjuring up images of cattle sold into slavery, cutting sugar cane probably. The cattle, we believe, were sold to a slaughterhouse somewhere outside the region. It appears our cow thief and his friends were part of a bigger operation. He then changed the subject, filling me in on the charges, 25 counts of cattle theft, the names of the lawyers and the judge involved, and when the smelly little bugger would be back in front of a judge. By the time I got back to the office, the other reporters had returned from their various assignments. John McCausland I'd met before, and this time he was too busy to say much. Then there was Rachel Porter, the first and only female reporter on staff, and Steve Farnham. The introductions were brief and friendly, and for the first time I felt welcome to this warehouse of words. Too bad I still didn't feel like a reporter. Over the next hour I banged away on an ancient Underwood typewriter, turning out my debut at the Granby Leader Mail. Bancroft then tore it to pieces with a pencil while I looked over his shoulder, pulling out words, moving quotes, and making it clear that Simpson was accused of crimes but not convicted. On the night of March 15, Simpson allegedly drove to a field on the 10th Range Road in Dunham, where police say he stole 3 cows, and so on. Upon questioning, I admitted I didn't know what kind of cattle they were. They have different kinds? Bancroft said nothing further to me about the story. He didn't say it was bad, didn't say it was good, didn't offer any advice, just sat there and smoked. As I looked around, plumes of smoke rose from behind the other typewriters, as words spilled onto pages and lives changed all around us. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed that, and hope that in this time at home that I'll be part of your reading list. So good luck, everybody. Stay healthy.